Hey all, this is Qesankh Maa Kheperu, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Philando Castile verdict, in which the officer was acquitted of all the charges and just basically let go. Of course, the police department said that they're going to sever ties with him. But I want to talk a little bit about why this travesty of justice falls upon us. And also with that, I want to talk about the large amount of police shootings of young African-American males, what that means, how we can deal with that appropriately. But starting out, please subscribe to this channel if you like my videos, and I'll go ahead and make more. I'll continue to make more. But let's get into this. I'll describe a little bit about the background about this case, and I am going to include the actual video of the shooting. It's kind of graphic in the description box, so you can take a look at it. And I think it was back in July 6, 2016, Philando Castile, his girlfriend, Diamond, and his little girl were traveling with him. They got stopped at a stoplight. The officer approached him, and I believe Philando had admitted that he had a licensed gun. He went to reach for, I believe what he said was his wallet, but the police officer shot him and fired 7 times, and he consequently died in the car. His girlfriend, Diamond, pulled out her cell phone, recorded the incident while he was dying. And it was kind of horrific. A couple of things that concerned me about the video as I was watching it was Diamond's reaction. She was very cold, distant, detached from the whole event, and was able to describe everything, but it wasn't a typical emotional reaction that you'd expect from anyone, not just a woman, about seeing their mate dying in front of their eyes. So that kind of was very concerning to me. And you know, and also too, her having a name Diamond. I don't know why some of these guys pick mates with names like that, because as you know, your name determines your destiny. Your name is a vibrational frequency that gives you energy. So having a name like Diamond is mystifying to me. But when you're living in a corrupt world and corrupt culture, this is the byproducts of that. So let's get into the details of this, okay? So what I want to talk about are 2 things that are a possibility here, and I don't claim to have any inside information. I did do an oracle reading on this, and with the Dunater, and there's other readings I could have done, like the Ifa or the I Ching. But you always want to do an oracle reading and go to God to find out the final word on what happened, what this is about, and all this. So again, not going to go into much of the oracle reading, but there are 2 things we have to look at here. There is one thing is the setting the stage for the acquittal, and number 2, dealing with occult forces. So let me deal with the first one, which is what the oracle pointed to, is that we're dealing in a world that has a corrupt judicial system. And a good friend of mine was an attorney. He says, if you want justice, you won't find that in the courtroom, and that is so true. We know that I've always said that the timeline has been changed. We were on a timeline where the moon cults were ruling the planet, and that got shifted to the sun cult. Many claim that that happened during 325 AD with the Roman Emperor Constantine changing the religion and the worship of from the worship of Mary to Jesus. You know, so we know that the moon is a symbolism of the female energy, and the sun is Haru, male energy. Okay, which is sun, the actual son, the father, and all of that. So we're living in a time in when what is valued in this culture is cleverness. It's being able to get one up on somebody, you know, and that's symbolized by the deity Sebek, which you see here, has the head of a jackal and long ears, because Sebek is left brain thinking. So you have to understand that we're dealing in a culture that worships and is polarizing left brain thinking, because left brain thinking is not dealing in any way, shape, or form with justice or morality. For that, you have to go to the right brain, which is integrated brain thinking. So when you're seeing things like these injustices, mass police shootings, where police officers are let go despite the fact that video evidence clearly indicated that they were guilty, what you're dealing here is attorneys, prosecutors, judges, all in cahoots with one another, and basically using influence and power to step over the innocent, the victimized. And this is because we have subscribed to this left brain way of thinking that tells us all there is that's out there is the physical. There's nothing that is metaphysical. You have to understand that we're consciousness, and it's one consciousness. So what you do to another person, you're actually doing to yourself, because there's no separation. But the left brain, it thinks individualistically, and it separates, defines, and labels. So in its limited mode of thinking, it thinks that we are separate, that there is no connection. You know what I mean? So that you have these people who are not spiritually evolved, going around thinking that if they can oppress others, that it doesn't directly affect them. This is the realm we're getting into when we talk about the goddess Ma'at. Ma'at is goddess of truth, justice, and righteousness. Her mate is Tahuti. Tahuti is wisdom. Tahuti is the true lawyers who enact wisdom when they're working in courtroom settings. So let's go back to the courtroom setting of ancient Egypt, because that represents the best example of the way it should be. And here are our cast of characters. We have the weighing of the heart against the feather. Now, the inspector of that, to make sure that the way is correct, is Sebek, because Sebek deals directly with facts, not truth, but facts. So he's able to inspect and weigh the scales to make sure everything is working correctly. Then you have Tahuti, the scribe, who records everything. Then you have Oser. Oser is known as the great uniter. He has gone beyond the influence of emotions. So he is known as being center. So he is the judge in all of this, all right? And Ma'at is the law. So the law is there. The law is objective. Tahuti prescribes or says this is how the law should apply in this situation, because Tahuti's thinking is right brain, which is dynamic thinking. It doesn't rely on references, experience, precedents, or anything of that nature, because you have to understand that you cannot see what's inside the heart of people. Only the right brain, going beyond the higher psychic levels, can understand and interpret why a person commits the crimes that they do. Henceforth, if you have a person that's brought up in a corrupt society, the ancient African tradition says it takes a village to raise a child. Is that person truly responsible for his or her actions when the community itself failed in raising that individual appropriately? So what is the measure? How do we then prescribe the law to that individual? We have to say that society failed that individual, so it's not the individual's fault. This is how ancient Kemet looked at things. It took a view of the whole and then was able to cast judgment. In this society, it's all about cleverness. You know, it's all about corruption, and that's stemming from the left brain. You're never going to get justice from the left brain. And this is where you have your lawyers, your judges, who all they can think out of is that polarized left brain thinking. And this is why we cannot see that there's a connection between many police shootings, police officers getting off the hook, and yet the courtroom, you know, let me give you a case in point as how the left brain works. And the original police shooting, I forgot this happened, I bet it was in the 1990s, where the gentleman, I forgot his name for some reason, gets out the car and he was beaten by police in Los Angeles, right? So what did they do? What did the lawyers do in that case to get the police officers off? They took the video and they chopped the video off, typical left brain thing where it's separating things, played the pieces of the video individually to show that, oh, this police officer wasn't participating, this police officer didn't hit so hard, this police officer backed off a bit, then he went in, but it shows that he had thought to think that this may have not been the right course of action. So when you are separating things and looking at them isolated and don't understand the connection between all of them, case in point, letting the video play in its entirely, rather chopping it up, then what you don't get is the connection, because the right brain thinks through the whole of the connection and the pieces which lead to the truth of the situation. And that's just a very basic example of how our society and left brain thinking works. So you have these people who are in cahoots, the prosecutor, you know, judges, the system itself, and the media, because the media is one of the biggest purveyors of creating strife, division, because that's what they have to do, because the media is connected and works through the global elite. And the global elite wants to do what? They want to basically create a world where you have infighting. And when you have infighting, it's easier to control the masses, the population, because they are not united in a consensus of thought. And how do they do that? Specifically, they create climates of racial strife. And what they typically do is they take resources from one, give it to the other, take rights from one and give it to the other, and have them fighting upon who has more rights, who has more resources, and they sit back and laugh and watch that. Typical Sebek, Sebek in his clever negative form, because Sebek can be very correct in what he does, and there is a place for Sebek. And this is why you get into Ma'at, which is cosmological thinking. Ma'at says there's a place and time for everything. Everything fits within the whole to support the whole. So even Sebek has a rightful place, but what we find out is that when you elevate Sebek and you take Oser, which is a great uniter, and you devalue him, then you have a corrupt society, is what we have here. Because judges aren't held responsible for their emotions. They're supposed to be beyond the influence of emotions, but they're not. So this is why you'll see these verdicts and the corruption that's going on now. So this is what we are dealing with here, is a planet that is overridden by a certain polarized way of thinking. And what is this way of thinking specifically? It's the Aristotle, it's the Cartesian logic. What do I mean by Cartesian logic? I mean that the logic that says that there's always a one-to-one correlation between things. And when you have this Cartesian logic, you only think that the way that to change things is to get directly involved. I've always given this case about Bruce Willis. He is our protagonist. The antagonist sets the plot in motion. So how does Bruce Willis overcome the villain? He grabs a bunch of weapons, which is on the same level as the villains, and he combats them using the same weaponry. Well, we know from the Egyptian story of Osar and Aset that Haru, the son of Oser, or Asar, or Osiris, the only way Haru was able to defeat his evil uncle Set was to go to Tahuti, right brain, integrated brain thinking, get wisdom from Tahuti, and Tahuti says, you cannot beat him with an army. You cannot beat Set and dethrone Set, because Set took the throne from Oser, using the same means that Set is using. Einstein said it best: you can't solve a problem using the same mindset that created the problem. So Tahuti instructed and counseled Haru. Tahuti is the oracle system, the Ife, the Medunate, the Tyro runes, and gave him the knowledge to beat Set. And at the end of the day, what happened when you have somebody like Haru integrated thinking? Well, Haru stands for circumspection, looking at the whole before making a decision. He also stands for your will. So what happened, what Haru did to his uncle, he didn't slay his uncle. He said, according to cosmological thinking, there's a place and time for everything. So he actually cast Set to the underworld to clear the way for the bark or the boat to go through the underworld. So we understand that there's a place for everything, and there is a value system that is assigned to things and a hierarchy. So what I talked about before is that we have the global elite who is ruling the planet, who is purposely disseminating information and creating an ideology that creates strife through mass media propaganda. And you'll see this as to where they control the judicial system, they control the police, they control the lawyers, they control the judges, to where they can, in one swoop or just massively across the country, get these police officers off the hook by using various means and methods. Some of the means are overcharging the police officers, because when you overcharge them, there's no lesser charge to convict them on, so therefore you have to let them go. You know, and there's other things that they use. I've already described a couple of them. When you showing videotape, you don't show the entirety of it. You break it down and overanalyze the videotape, you know. And then there is the selection of the jury, to where they immediately, again, a left brain thing, try to cast out people of color on the jury, African-American men, African-American women, try to get them off the jury, or pick jurors who have a very racist ideology. Not overtly, but they do, you know? So that's what we're dealing with here, is a system that is placated upon elevating cleverness, elevating segregated thought process, separating, labeling, defining, saying I versus you. Not understanding that at the end of the day, there's only one consciousness, that the physical being is only a vehicle to express your consciousness, and consciousness is within, and consciousness is God. Now let's go on to the other thing, which is that was the way and means that that is going on today, you know. But the other aspect I want to get into, and I find it's the more important aspect, is the occult realm. We know that the top global elite who rule the planet are into the occult. They have taken the ancient Egyptian religion, and what they have done is they perverted it and now are using it for their means. They're conducting rituals, they're into Satanism, they're into pedophilia, they're kidnapping children and using that in these mass rituals. So, what you see here, when you have an instance of so many police officers getting off, you have to ask yourself, this defies the odds. You have to say, well, you know, there would be 1 or 2 police officers that will be convicted, and you're right, there would be. So what is going on here? And I'm telling you, this takes us back to synchronicity. You know, synchronicity is how the universe operates, because we know that your thoughts, your vibrations, those thoughts permeate from within to without and create a reality. Reality is not objective. There is no one reality that we're experiencing. We all are experiencing different realities based on our belief systems and based on our destiny, why we came here to, what we came here to experience. Some people came here to experience giving, seeking nothing in return. Others came to experience poverty. Others came to experience dying at an early age. So those thoughts project outward, create a hologram in front of us for things, objects, people for us to interact with, so that we can gain experience from that, so that we can go on to our next life wiser. All right. So synchronicity happens in this way, that the global elite are master magicians. They're dark magicians. They know how to manipulate the space-time continuum. And I've always said this because you have these idiots in the conspiracy theory arena who are talking about a brave new world or George Orwell's 1984, where they actually think that we're heading toward a new world order. One thing you have to understand is we're living in 1984. We're living in Aldous Huxley, A Brave New World. That is already here. We're now moving on to the next phase of the plan, and they're implementing that, because the left brain is so concrete in its thinking that you don't understand what's going on. So you think that the global elite are going to institute a militarized police state, a new world order where they subjugate, take away your rights and subjugate you. That's not what they're going to do. It's what they're going to do is, through the occult powers and occult magic, you know, control the mind, control you psychically, which is what they're already doing. If you investigate this subject matter, you'll see on the internet there are many instances of people who have gone missing, many instances of people saying, I had this weird thought to go someplace and be there. Now, where synchronicity comes involved is, if you do this research, which gets very scary, there are situations where you find that, you know, a father showed up looking for his son, and at the same time, another father showed up looking for his son who had gone missing. And they both had the same last name, you know, and they both arrived at the exact same day and time. So what's going on here? And a further study of synchronicity, you'll see that, you know, certain things in our society were developed at the same time. Let's talk about that. We know that calculus was discovered not by one individual, by a couple of individuals simultaneously. The theory of evolution was not pioneered by one individual, but was discovered by multiple individuals. Decimal fractions, color photography, sunspots, thermometer, the telescope was, I believe, discovered by 6 different people. You know, so as a filmmaker, the one thing I noticed that I found very odd and interesting was the fact that when I would come out with a film, several other films would come out at the exact same time with the same theme. Case in point, I did a film back in 1996 called Bugged. And at that same time when we released the film, myself and the production company, other films came out at the same time, which was A Bug's Life, Joe's Apartment by MTV. And it was just kind of curious how there was this aligning of things. You know what I mean? And Hollywood knows about this, because many times when a script is written and produced, this at the same time, other scripts will be out at the same time, which is why you always, when you're pitching a project, have to sign a disclaimer saying that any relation to your project that they produce is merely coincidental, which is merely synchronicity. You know, so where am I going with all of this? What I'm trying to tell you is that when you're looking at this mass acquittal of all these police officers and these shootings, we're dealing with occult magic synchronicities. We're dealing with someone manipulating the space-time continuum. So what you have, and you and I have this power to go into the astral plane to visit through lucid dreaming alternate parallel universes where that are very similar to this, control those, interact with those to where they directly affect this fourth dimensional reality. It can happen, and that's when you'll experience certain things that are happening. You know, you may be thinking of, you know, like a pink donut, and somebody will walk up to you with a pink donut in their hand. That's you controlling the reality in front of you. We all have this power. Now, let me take this a step further. When you have subscribed to left brain thinking, meaning that you think it's okay to go to a university which teaches nothing but regurgitation of information, doesn't teach higher knowledge, when you think it's okay to engage in Western religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and which all predominantly are based on left brain thinking, when you think that is okay, and then you subscribe to the concept of a God that is outside of you, not inside, because there is no outside. Everything is happening that you see in front of you is actually happening in front and inside of you, that you're projecting outward to create a holographic experience. When you think this is okay and you live your life based on the fact that you ask God, oh, God, help me, as you see in these mass police shootings with the mother of or the parents, or actually I should say the mothers, who go out there and cry, oh, my baby, they shot my baby. Lord Jesus, help me. God, help me. And you think just because you're in the right, that God will intervene and do something. God will not help you simply because of the fact that you're in the right. You won't get any help because, for one thing, God, there's a hierarchy. And God is at the very top, and God doesn't directly get involved like that because God has the gods, the deities, the spirits, and other interdimensional beings that govern our lives and influence us. So God has put in place ma'at, divine order. Divine order is cosmologics. These cosmology dictates that there are other beings, other entities that are in between you and God that govern the state of things. So God, one of the things that God may put forth was not just Shu, Tefnut, Geb, it was Ma'at. Before that came, God said, putting in place the law, divine order, so that these other things can come into play. So God doesn't directly jump in and assist you. But the mere fact that you say, oh, God, help us, we're in the right, God, you know, the mere fact that you are praying to an external being that does not exist, because the only thing that exists is within you, God's consciousness is within you, and your existence, the reason why you reincarnated in this fourth dimensional reality or hologram, the reason why is not to do good. That's a given. You should be doing that. And the thing is, when you get to the higher levels of being, there is no right and wrong. So there is no concept of good to work off of because everything is one. The mere fact that you are asking for an outside entity to help you betrays the power that is within you. You will not gain and tap into your spiritual power, which is why you came here, to become a spiritual, powerful individual, a God man, God woman. That's why you're here. You basically circumvent your ability to tap into your power when you pray to an outside entity that's other than yourself. When you subscribe to an intermediary, such as a priest or a priestess or a minister, to give you salvation, to give you God's word, you have therefore lost the battle. You are a lost individual. You do not know thyself, because in order to understand and know thyself, you have to understand that you are our God. You are powerful, and that when you ask for help, you're asking for the divine being within you to step in and help. Do you understand? And the way that you can do this is by tapping into the traditional way of life that our ancestors had in mind for us. The timeline has been corrupted. We were supposed to be focused on the moon cult, the moon clan, not the sun. We were supposed to be focused on the integrated way of thinking, but that has been circumvented by those who are powerful and elite. And what they have done is they said, the only thing that we're going to get this planet to focus on is the externalized, polarized left brain way of thinking. What is that exactly? That is, again, Cartesian logic. Is the Hegelian dialectic. What is the Hegelian dialectic? It is either left or it's right. It's either right or wrong. It's either Democrat or Republican. You know, it talks about things in such a way that there's no middle ground, no area, no cosmological higher view. You know what I mean? That's called the Hegelian dialectic, and that is what's got the planet in chaos. You know, because we cannot think any other way. We cannot think integrated thinking. This is why when you go to African cultures and you go to their Vodun shrines, the Ifa shrines, you'll see that on there they have a statue of Mary, because they have no problem with congregative thinking. They understand that everything is one. It's only in Western society where it sets up this grand battle of it's me against you. You know, I cannot accept that. No, you know, you are my enemy. No, the only thing that exists is the physical. There's no metaphysical. There's nothing else. There's no astral plane. There's no Akashic records for us to tap into. This is the trouble that we are in. And when you subscribe to that, which is against Ma'at, then you are responsible for the deaths of people like Philando Castile. You are responsible for those young men, African-American men who have been shot because you have asked an outside entity to come in and save you. So you have placed yourself in an infantile state to where you are helpless, that you have to depend on an outside external force to save you. And this is the condition that the global elite love and want us to be in, to where we're forever seeking the Father to help us, you know, seeking the outside government or figure to come in and help us, because it doesn't want you to understand who you are really. That is what is going on. And if you understand further and you start to study the culture and religion of our ancestors, and of course mass media wants to get you afraid of the culture because they want to cast it as pagan, occult, evil. And again, that's left brain thinking, because we understand congregative thinking says there's a place and time for everything. Everything serves to support the whole, you know. So when you start thinking like that, then there's a problem. So if you were to tune into the tradition of our ancestors, what would it do? It would empower you. And one of the things you have to understand is we have the ability to create an ergomor. What is that? That is a spiritual entity that when invoked can work on your behalf to do a mission. So let's look at it this way. Most groups on the planet have encountered oppression. And I'm talking about the Japanese, you know, I'm talking about the Italians, you know, I'm talking about the Irish, but I'm talking about the Jews. So let's say, for example, what did the Jews do when they found oppression from the Muslims? They formed the Mossad. And the Mossad said Jewish blood doesn't come cheap, that if you take out one of our own, you're going to pay a dear price. The Italians got involved and created the Italian mob. Japanese, they put together their mob. Because you have the right to defend yourself. And when you are supporting a system that does not support you, then you have the right to take the means and measures to deal with things appropriately. And if you cannot find justice from a system that purports to promote justice, then you have the right to do similar to what the Jews did and say, all right, if this is going to be the case, and like the Irish did with the IRA, then we're going to work on our own best efforts to liberate ourselves and to deal with those who have killed, murdered, and maimed our own people. We're going to deal with that. And I'm sorry if if you don't like that. Now, I am not in any way prescribing the fact that you go out there and start a mob or start a group of assassins to take care of things. But what I am saying to you is that if you do not have a love and respect of yourself, your people, and your culture, for one thing, then who else is going to respect you? They're going to continue to do what they're doing. Oh, Sarah should be on the throne, ruling. In place of him, we have Set. Set is left brain and emotions, animal instinct. And Set is going crazy, destroying this planet. And we have allowed Set to sit at that throne, and we have not gone out there and, as Set did for her love for her husband, Set Isis, she got the pieces of Asar, found the pieces of Asar across the world, put those pieces back together, and resurrected her husband Asar, and he took the throne back and put in place Ma'at, justice. The only way that you are going to deal with these people who are using occult forces against you is to tune back into the religion that you were told to hate, to tune into the practices of the old ways, because you know who's using them? The global elite is using them, the cabal. But behind, they're preaching through their mass media to hate voodoo, to hate meditation, to hate these alternative New Age practices. But in closed doors, like you saw in Stanley Kubrick's great film, Eyes Wide Shut, they are practicing ritual sacrifices. They are doing all of their incantations. They're summoning spirits. But most importantly, they are manipulating the space-time continuum to create a synchronistic effect. As you see in these massive verdicts of acquittals, they know how to manipulate circumstances. And the one thing that we do need to fear is that if we don't tune into this magic, we cannot win this battle, because you cannot fight that type of power to where it can control your thinking, make you show up at some place that you didn't mean to be or didn't want to be. You cannot fight something that will create a reality in a situation that is against you. It may seem like bad luck. This is what they do. They can do this. They can manipulate it so that all of a sudden you find that, you know, there's a massive amount of car crashes. All of a sudden there's a massive amount of deaths due to heart disease. This is what they do. They don't engage necessarily in the Cartesian logic, which is the one-to-one correlation I was speaking about earlier with Bruce Willis. They know that to combat something, you don't have to go out there and protest. You don't have to suddenly get a bunch of arms and ammunition and go fight your enemy. That is very limited left brain thinking. They know that they can do a ritual or do a deep meditation and go into the astral world to where the template reality exists, manipulate that reality on that level, and then it changes the reality on our level to benefit them. They know how to do these practices, and you have that power to do it. You can do it yourself. We know that the experiments that were done, where they took thousands of people who meditated upon world peace, and directly after that, we saw a reduction in terrorism. We saw a reduction in violence, domestic violence. We saw a reduction in arguments. And yet, not many people know about this study or know about that this was actually done. So that's when you travel to those alternate planes and manipulate those realities, which have a direct impact and influence on this reality. This is real. This is all real. We just have to tap into this power and use it. But we become cultural xenophobes. We're so afraid of that which is inherently ours. This is ours. And all this will do is empower you, make you a God man, God woman. And I'm going to tell you something in closing. These ministers, these Christian ministers, are the worst they're corrupt, they're evil, because what they'll do is they'll step on the world stage with these mothers who have lost their sons. Oh, my baby. And Minister Jacob Fried Chicken Johnson will stand there and say, oh, we're going to stand up for justice and we're going to protest until something happens, which would mean nothing will happen. But I want you all to tithe and give to my church so I can drive in my new Lamborghini, you know, and never, ever do they directly jump in, work with other ministers to do anything except kiss the butt of the global elite. These men are the worst. Do not give to their churches, do not support their churches, and most often their churches are in dilapidated communities, and they themselves have a mega church. It's beautiful. They're driving around nice cars. Most of them have expensive jets, while the community itself falls apart. While the shipping of drugs, the over-policing of the communities, the mass incarceration of Black males continues while these ministers stay silent. Oh, they'll tell you that I'm a prosperity minister, and what that means is that if you give me money, I'll give you prosperity in your life. I'll work with God to give you prosperity, which is essentially to a bribe. You're saying to God, if I tithe and give you money, you'll in return give me something. That's a bribe. That's not spiritual evolution. That's not what God is about. And most of these ministers don't even know God. They have no connection, relationship to God, but they're phony, because if you really want a connection to God and speak to God, you'll go to the oracle. You go to a diviner, someone who is skilled at divination. So I want to tell you in closing that you are responsible for the world you see around you. You cannot accept responsibility and hold yourself accountable when you support the very system that you claim to be against. I see so many people going to these universities and talking about they're educated. I'm like, you're not educated. You're not. You're not. And the one thing I want you to get is a book. It's called Super Learning. And it details by Sheila Ostringer about how the Russians pioneered trans-induction learning, meaning they were able to go into the inner planes and pull out information from the Akashic records. But more importantly, they actually did scientific studies on communicating with historical figures in the inner planes, Da Vinci, you know, and Galileo, and taking that knowledge and bringing it back out of the outer planes with you to where you suddenly are painting like a master painter. They've done these experiments using our ancient technology, and now they have published their works. We can tune into this power, but we don't want to. We can create the ergomores, or we can create these spirits to go out there and deal with those who have done wrong. We don't have to rely on the police. Police, they're not going to intervene when it comes to real justice. The justice system is not going. There's too much hoop jumping, too many laws that they've set up to trip you up on your way to justice. You won't get it. So the way you deal with it is, I gave the example of the Irish Republican Army or the Jewish Mossad, but on a spiritual level, is to do a ritual and create an entity or a spirit and tell that entity, I want you to go out there and deal with this person who has done wrong, who's committed this crime, in the name of Ma'at. And these spiritual entities are in the astral planes waiting for us. They want to help us. They love us. They're saying, talk to me. Let us commune. Let me help you. Because I'm telling you, the cabal is tuned into interdimensional evil entities, and they are using them to control our reality. Anyway, I've said enough. If you like what I've said, like this video, subscribe to my channel to get more exciting stuff. Do not get upset over what is going on with these police shootings, because the elite want us to get emotionally riled up. They want us to act irrationally. Use this as an opportunity to tune into your spiritual power and revisit the wealth of information that our ancestors left for us. That's all I have to say for now. This is Qesankh Maa Kheperu, and thank you.